Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Todd Knizik. I'm the Executive Director of Arts Services Initiative of Western New York. We're the Regional Arts Council. How many of you are with us for the first time for one of our sessions? Wow, wonderful. Welcome, welcome. I'm hoping you heard about this through our website or Facebook page or newsletter that we send out. If not though, please go to asiwny.org and sign up for our newsletter. We send out two monthly. One is an opportunities email where we list our upcoming professional development sessions and those of other folks that we think you might be interested in. We also list calls for work, job opportunities, things like that. We also do a best practices monthly email where we give some thoughts on everything from governance to marketing to issues in the field for both artists and cultural organizations. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this evening, New York State Council on the Arts, Fund for the Arts in Erie County. It's thanks to them that all of our professional development sessions remain free and open to everyone. This is part of our series. We have past materials and also recordings of our sessions available on our website, and we're recording this one as well, and we'll post it. So, if there's something you didn't quite scribble down in your notes and wanted to go back to it, we'll have that set. One opportunity coming up that some of you might be interested in. Last year, we brought the New York Foundation for the Arts in for a multi-day Artist as Entrepreneur Boot Camp. It was really a great opportunity for 44 artists to spend a few days really going deep on their careers and learning more about everything from legal to marketing. And some of those artists who attended really have been able to move forward with some of the things they learned. The good news is our friends down at the Cattaraugus County Arts Council are bringing NYFA in this year, and their deadline to apply is July 16th. Their website is myartscouncil.net. Again, that's myartscouncil.net. You still have a couple of weeks to apply for that, and I really would highly encourage you to take a look at it and see if it's something that might be of interest to you, and if it is, go for it. And one thing we're up to that might be of interest to you that's on all of your tables, we've just launched a fiscal sponsorship service for artists, and that can be on an ongoing basis where we can lend you our nonprofit status so that as you get donations, those donators can write those off, and we can sort of help you apply for grants. So we can also do one-offs. For instance, for the NISCA grants every year, we can be your fiscal sponsor for that too. You've got a one sheet on that, and it's also available on our website. So none of that is why you're here tonight. So on to why we're here tonight. We wanted to talk a little bit about marketing and publicity. And we know that cultural organizations and especially artists have little to no budgets for paid marketing. And so we rely on our friends in the media to try to get some coverage. And that can oftentimes be frustrating. It can oftentimes be a challenge. And so we thought we wanted to hear from some folks in the media about how to maybe make that a little easier. What do they need from you in order to, at least be in the field, right? Be in the ballpark and get some consideration. So far we have with us, and we're hoping we have a couple more, or at least one more show up as we go. But we have Jeff Kelly, who's the editor-in-chief of The Public, and we have Scott Sackett, who is the Arts and Culture Desk Reporter from WBFO. It's a newly created desk earlier this year. And BFO had always been providing arts and theater coverage, but they've really upped it with at least 50 news stories a year, thanks to the creation of that desk. So to get started, beyond what I just did, if you'd like to introduce yourselves, tell a little bit about yourself and the media outlet you represent. And by the way, please do use the mics, just especially for the recording.
Is it working now?
Yep.
Is that working? Okay. Okay, I will introduce myself. As Todd said, I'm Jeff Kelly, editor of The Public, which was a weekly newspaper, daily website, which was launched in November of 2014. Prior to that, I was editor of Art Voice in aggregate, about 10 years. I also ran for 2.5 years a weekly newspaper in Pittsburgh, sadly now defunct, called Pulp, like so many weekly newspapers, defunct. And that pretty much summarizes my career in journalism. I tend to write myself more about politics than about arts, but not entirely, because we're a small outlet, and so everybody writes about everything. everybody does a little bit of everything. And of course, as editor-in-chief, I sort of direct coverage across the whole sort of continuum of stories. So that's good.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you at last.
Nice to meet you. Can you hear me there? Is this being recorded then? You can catch me. I'm Scott Sackett, as you can see from WBFO. So I'm hoping most of you know WBFO. It's the local NPR station. I started in public broadcasting in 1991, and I've been with, you could say, public broadcasting and radio and television throughout that time. Classical music. I did work at WEBR for a while. I worked at the Associated Press in Rome for a short while. So my career is mostly in public broadcasting, in film, and radio. There was a new position that was created this year. It just started. I just started in this position as the lead reporter for the Arts and Culture Desk. As Todd mentioned, WBFO has long been covering the arts, but now there's not only just a big push, and there's resources to do more in-depth coverage. And that's what I do. As the lead reporter, I do more of the feature stories. I don't know if you've had a chance to see them or hear them, and I say see them, they're on the website. So you can go up and find any of the stories that have been done, and that may be useful for you to see what's been covered. Mostly the ones that I produce are the feature-length stories. So what I'm going to try to provide two perspectives a little bit tonight. I will tell you about being a beat reporter, a feature reporter, and I'd like to just sort of chime in anytime my colleagues talk about what it's like to be an editor, and I'll kind of represent Brian Meyer, who's the station manager, editor at WBFO, and kind of nod when it's the same and where it may be different. And just to point out somewhat the obvious, but it's something to keep in mind is, as a radio station, as a radio producer, there's an acoustic consideration all the time. Sometimes I wish I had the freedom of having print. So you'll always hear me talk about, or often hear me talk about, how that helps and also sort of constricts what I'm able to do.
And I actually want to add one more thing to my brief resume. I spent 2 years as senior media officer for something called the Qatar Foundation, in charge of placing stories about this, it's a long story, but this giant sort of educational enterprise in the Middle East, in newspapers and radio stations and TV. So I've actually been on the other side of the fence too.
That's a good point.
So we actually canvassed and got a few questions together that we're going to pose first, and then at the end we'll have time for questions from all of you as well. The first question is pretty broad, speaking about the arts of any discipline really. What kinds of stories or events are you looking to cover?
Yeah, okay, wow, jump right into that one. That's the meaty one. Let's see if I can try to describe, and please feel free to afterwards throw some questions to me. The stories specifically that I am looking to find, to develop, to pitch to my editor, and so far he loves everything I do. I'm looking for stories on the arts and cultures in Western New York that have a real strong Western New York connection. But I'm always looking for a backstory, an interesting backstory, context for this, that either gives it a national perspective, puts it in the context of maybe something that's unexpected. Right now I'm doing a story on an exhibition of James Joyce, and the backstory for that are the Gaelic Games. I love that because it allows me to talk to two audiences or one audience, and to bring them into that story maybe one way and introduce them to something else with which they may not be familiar. So I'm also looking, again, as the lead, I'm also looking for the stories that probably wouldn't make the front page, that probably wouldn't be found in a press release. I use my contacts, I use social media, I watch, look, I listen, I ask for a lot of advice from other people, and I try to find the stories myself. Now that doesn't mean that people haven't contacted me, and there's been good results from that. But it's nice for me to kind of watch and figure out where are the hidden stories. I'm looking for things that are different perspectives, and very enriching. I'm looking for enriching stories. Okay, something for which I am not looking is an opening. Personally, I'm not looking for an opening. That goes to my editor.
Okay, well, I've got a couple different ways of answering this. One is sort of aspirational, and then one reflects some of the realities of a publication like mine, which is probably worth knowing because it affects how you might address a pitch to us. Aspirationally, I'm looking for stories about people or institutions that are doing something new. That is deeply unfair, I understand, to a lot of cultural institutions and of all stripes that have in fact been doing wonderful things for decades. You know, and it seems unfair to ask that they show to me why it is that they're doing something new, what's new about it, what's challenging, an assumption about that institution or about the arts and cultural scene in this region. But it's still, that's what I'm hoping for always. And there are ways, of course, I think, for even long-serving institutions who sort of really specialize in doing a particular thing to open a door onto something new about what they're doing this year, even if that something new is someone new, or some new sort of twist on an event. I really am looking for something new, however. I'm looking for something that challenges people's ideas about arts and culture in this region. That said, I also would reiterate everything Scott said. That said, the way it works at a newspaper like ours, and I've worked at several of them in different cities, and this is how it works pretty much everywhere, is that I rely on a host of freelancers to provide content for us, particularly on the cultural side of things. I can assign some stories. If something is really interesting to me and I want it covered, I can find someone to do it. But more often, I am, in fact, accepting pitches from our writers, saying, hey, I've heard about this from this person who's doing this, and there's going to be this event, and there's going to be this project. I want to write about it. So, because I rely on that so heavily, it really sort of behooves you, who are trying to get us to cover your stuff, to look at those names, figure out who writes what interests them, and pitch them directly. Always pitch us too. You know, always send your press releases, send your info to us, so we're aware of it, and so that maybe we can sort of gently push this stubborn freelancer who will not take assignments toward that. But it really helps to know who our regular contributors are, or to find someone who you know is a good journalist and who is interested in the kind of thing you're doing, and say, hey, why don't you pitch the story to Jeff at the Public, to Jeff in Corey, or to whomever. That helps me too.
In some ways, as a writer, I feel like so much of what I learned, if there are any writers out here, you know, it's always a back to basics, something you may have learned in third grade, may have been taught again in high school. We write stories. We tell stories. We want an audience to stay with us after the first line, the first soundbite, and so we're always looking for good stories. And we're good at developing stories too and finding the stories. But I'll pick up on what Jeff said, you know, looking for something new, looking for something challenging. It's pitching the story. It's got to be a strong story. If you're going to put a press release into WBFO, and Brian Meyer is going to see it, it's got to be a super strong pitch. And his piece of advice is, would I listen to that? Okay. I'm not looking for that, although it might be interesting. He did assign me a story once that he knew about was interesting. So it may potentially get assigned to me, but there's got to be a story there. There's got to be a real good story. And Brian particularly wants something that is hyper-local, okay? We broadcast to Western New York, you know. That's our audience. People like local stories. That's...
Yeah, that's true of us too. I mean, we're very, very locally focused. The sort of national or even international context in which a story lives and breathes is interesting to us, but we're interested in what you are doing here, more than about how it reflects what is happening elsewhere.
But sometimes that can be timely and a nice time.
Yeah.
We're always kind of looking to bring in the local perspective on a national story, and that I think that plays to the arts very easily. I'm doing a piece now on the Albright Knox. I didn't go down this road, but one of my line of questioning for the Albright Knox was, is what you're doing common across the country, or is what you're doing unique? And when I heard it's across the country, I was happy to hear that, but that wasn't in my story. I just left that out.
Yeah.
If they were doing something unique, if they were the only one to be doing it, well, I would probably pick that up.
So Scott, you mentioned the press release, and that was something that a lot of people had questions about. So what kind of information should be included in the press release? Now I ask that two ways, very practically, right? What pieces of information do you need to determine, to just even have what you need to figure out whether it's a story for you? And then thematically, so that ties into your answers to the first one.
You're addressing that to me.
Well, to both of you, but we'll start with you.
You want to take that?
Sure, because I have really specific ideas.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
This is the second time I've done this. Is this the second time you've done the event? This particular one?
The last time was for cultural organizations. This one was geared more toward individual artists.
Yeah,
so don't completely recycle your
Okay.
answer, because that video is available, so you can go back and check if you answered this differently or the same.
Let us begin with the subject line. The subject line should identify it as a press release, but it should not stop there. Too often it does. Every day I get a dozen press releases that just say press release in the subject line, and I've got to tell you, I'm probably not going to. If I know who you are and who you represent, or what it is you're doing out there, then maybe I'm going to open it because I'm interested in you and your organization or whatever. But if I don't, and it just says press release, I'm just going to be like, I don't know what this is. So just put in a title that just says what this thing is: press release, title. It sounds simple. I don't mean to be dismissive, but it happens quite a lot. The other thing is, it's best for me if you don't make me open up a document, that if the text is in the body of an email. What you write, this is where you're actually sort of pitching, where you're telling the story, right? And so you've got a couple of paragraphs to make it sing. And that's sort of up to you and what your project is, and it's worth taking the time to do. After that, I need to know who I should talk to and what the practical considerations are. Is there a sort of timely hook to this? Is there an event? Is there something I can go see? And if you have images or video, I absolutely want you to include it in that initial press release, because it is captivating to me. It is likely to, sort of to intrigue me. And when I say me, I'm also referring to any writer who works for me too. And it's also useful, because if we do write a story, we may need those images or that video. If we don't have time to write something in depth for you, we might just be able to at least throw up a picture or video online with like a little snippet saying, hey, this is cool, we heard about this is happening, this is what this person is doing. Maybe that's not the story you want, but it's better than nothing. And we've got very limited resources. If you help us with material like that, it's great.
Good points. Thank you. Thank you for jumping in on those very practical matters. I will add a comment to the image and video. Don't pretend that that's going to do your job for you. Oh, I just have a great video, or I got a great image, and they're going to understand exactly what the story is. Okay, so that is my big caution about video and images. If it takes it to the next level, fine. But you still, job number one, you have to pitch a strong story, and Brian's piece of advice is, would I listen? Try it out on someone else. Would I listen? Can you get past the first sentence? Brian wants to know, Will the person wait beyond the first sentence? I'll just go back to not so much I would say, standardized format, sort of basic for media alerts. Okay, I mean, you can find some standard formats, easy to read, easy to understand. I don't think there's any magic to that. Again, it's the power of the writing, it's the power of your story. But I will emphasize not just the hyper-local link, but we're interested in humans. Okay, we're not interested in things. If it's a thing, it's the human reaction to things. Stories are always about people. Okay, even if the subject is not a person, it's the reaction. So always think about people. When I'm putting stories together, the three things for which I'm looking, I already alluded, is I'm looking for the story, I'm looking for the backstory, and I'm looking for how my listeners can react to that in some way. Something to do. Pick up a book, go to a show, go to the art gallery or something. And it's interesting because I said, I'm not interested in doing a press release on a showing per se. I'm interested in talking to artists 3 months before the show. I want to get you while you're working. I want to get you when you're sweating. I want to get you when you're tired, because that's where I think the interesting story is. And then if there's something down the road, or if they can go see a work you've already done before, that's great. That's what I'm looking at. So I know I got a little bit off topic. I would just say the basics of the media alert, but you've really got to hook Brian in right there at the top.
Yeah. One other thing I'd say too is so there's a media alert, right, which is pretty simple and straightforward, and just sort of says, hey, pay attention, this is going on. Then there's a press release, which is often a little more involved, a little more narrative in form, and those end up taking more time, because that's actually when you get to tell your story and try to make it sing to us, and where people often do things like, you'll collect quotes from yourself or from your collaborators and embed them into the narrative, and it feels like you're in fact writing a story which you may hope is going to be like just reprinted, and that's never going to happen at my outlet. It's never going to happen at NED, BFO, or I dare say at the Buffalo News or Buffalo Spree. There are outlets that do that just print press releases, and that's fine, that's great. Don't expect that of us. Expect that we are going to want to recast the story in our own way. And here's something that I just thought about. I was helping a friend actually write a press release on Monday, and she had collected all these quotes from various people involved in this project that she's working on, and she embedded some into the narrative very nicely. She's a good writer, and so it was a good press release. Then she had all these extra quotes, and I said, you know what, just throw them at the end, just without context. Just say that this is what other people have said. It's useful. It's you don't have to always, it just sort of falls under that list of sort of useful tools that you're offering to the writer, to the potential writer, to think about your story and possibly to use, if necessary. Most of the time, you or I, whoever's working on a story, is going to go after our own quotes. We're going to want to talk to you or to whomever you're working with. But it doesn't hurt to hear what other people have said about it. But you also don't need to write. You don't need to write like a 10,000 word story. In fact, you can't. So you got to write it in a page. So, but don't be afraid to sort of add a few things like that, or even to use them in a follow-up pitch. Like you send your press release, right? And you hopefully we both, if we were interested. If you don't hear back from us right away, maybe a few days later you send something else, and maybe what you do that time is you say, hey, I wanted to know if you were interested in this story at all. Here's what someone else had to say about this. Save a few things that you can parcel out separately to me, to Scott, to whatever other outlet you're trying, so that we're each getting some little thing of our own,
Good point. Let me one more, because I know you have a lot of good questions. On top of that, I love this idea that I would go through those quotes, because I am always looking. Chances are we're probably going to reframe the story anyway. Make sure that you, whether it's Facebook or social media of other types or on your website, make sure we can find other information. Because as soon as you got us hooked, you know, I personally am going to start looking around for other information. So don't cloister yourself as an artist.
I just want to touch on a point briefly that was alluded to about some of the other outlets out there. And I think, you know, absolutely that our larger media sources are going to take the information you present, just as they said, and figure out the story from there. There are many, many community level outlets, print outlets especially. And those are the ones that, at least in our personal experience, when we send that press release that's really written in the form of a story, we do manage to get quite a bit of coverage at that local level. And so, you know, you're absolutely looking for the big hit, right? I mean, for the regional paper, for the, you know, the story going out to Western New York and Southern Ontario. But in that sense, like, think about where you live, think about where your work is going to be displayed, think about anyone involved in your work. I mean, we've gotten printed in everything from Panorama Hispanico to the Ampo Legal to the Grand Island, whatever they're called, Dispatch maybe. And it's just been based on some connection to that community. So for those, please don't forget about them and, you know, investigate what outlets are out there. So you alluded again, this is good, you're segueing right into the next questions for me. The timing, like when is it a story, right? I mean, I think, are most of you here visual artists, or do we have visual artists? Raise your hand. Performing artists? Anyone who didn't raise their hand? Are you unsure? Anyway, so you've got a picture. You mentioned a little bit of when the creation of it is a story for you. So I'm asking it in that sense, but I'm also asking, you know, what's your deadline? Like if I've got something I want you to know about this coming weekend, when did you need to know about it?
Want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to try to answer for both parts, the news desk and I, the beat reporter. I'm finding and developing stories on a regular basis. If it coincides with an opening or a show, and it has happened twice, it's coincidental. It kind of works for me because it goes back to my third criterion: is the listener can go do something, but it doesn't have to be an opening or a show. So I'm going on a regular basis. For the news desk, we're developing stories a month in advance. Okay, so if you would know of something that's coming, a month in advance is not too long for your first contact. Not at all. The week of would be the second contact, as a reminder. And one thing that is critical, which is less to do with timing, make sure that you are available when we want to find out more and we give you a call. Make sure you or someone else is available. So I'd say the first time, 4 to 6 weeks for the first contact of something, going to the news desk. I'm looking in advance of that myself, but if you want to send something to BFO, 4 to 6 weeks for the first one, 1 week before the event or opening or something like that.
Yeah. That's about right. I mean, the practical consideration for us is if you're hoping that you're going to be covered in our print edition, it comes out Wednesday mornings. We need to know what it is you're doing the Friday before the paper you want to be in at the very, very latest. But much sooner is better.
And again, as you're investigating your outlets, make sure you're asking that question, because Buffalo Spree, for instance, it's a couple months in advance. They go to print well in advance of when their issue comes out. So always be checking in on things like that. So, all right, I've got an event a month before, a week before. What if I do lots of things? Like, is there a point where it's too much, where we have to kind of pick what things we're inviting you to or telling you about, or should we just keep trying?
I mean, I think you can do too much because you can be spending too much of your own time trying to draw attention to your work instead of doing the work. I think that a couple of notices, maybe a third or fourth, and maybe a third or fourth contact of some kind, phone call, email, whatever, is fine. I mean, I've never. It's easy to sound cynical about about liaising with people who are doing stuff, but it's what we do. I don't, we exist to reflect what artists are doing, so I never get tired of hearing from them at all. I never think to myself, I never roll my eyes and say, oh, not another one of press release from this person. I think, oh, okay, great, good to know, good to know, good to know. If we fail to act on it, it's not because we don't appreciate your contacts, it's because we're just limited in our resources in our space.
Excellent answer. I wish I had said that. Yeah.
I snuck in ahead of you there. That's all.
Good. Well, all I can do is echo that. Try to pitch the strongest stories, but I would say let me know, let us know that you're doing things. But it's not a substitute for high quality media alerts, press releases, something strong. Okay. So if they're good things on a regular basis and you get ignored, don't think you're doing something wrong. It's amazing what goes on behind the scenes that determines whether we call you back or not. People are out sick, people are on vacation. There's a major event in the newsroom this week. This week was a bad week for WBFO. Arts got kind of pushed aside because of politics and people out. Okay, so if you sent something this week, it would have just been a bad week. That's all there is to it. You can't. It's hard because I've been on the other end too, sending press releases, and you wonder why no one, what nothing, what did I do wrong? You know what? I'm taking that information in. I'm watching, and sometimes I just did a story now that I've been thinking about for 10 years. Sometimes things take time. What is that expression? Took a lifetime to become an overnight success. It takes time.
And this one comes from a few people. Is it always email? Is there ever a time when a call is appropriate? Showing up at your offices, following you home? That was literally what someone asked me. So I'll let you know who's going to get a restraining order.
You can follow me home, but you better bring like a six-pack. That's Todd can attest. Email is always best for me. A phone call, frankly, those of you who know me in this room can tell everybody here that I'm not really great at returning phone calls or answering them. And that's, again, no reflection. That's just, it's a disorder. But email is best because it's easily accessible all the time. I can just, if I need to be reminded about a thing that you're doing, I can just go to my email and look it up. It's better than trying to find the notebook that I jotted something down in while listening to your phone message. It's never inappropriate to follow up with a phone call and say, hey, I just don't say this. Don't say, hey, did you get my press release? Because if you emailed it, I did. But properly. But do call and say, hey, I just wanted to gauge your interest. Is there anything I can do? That's awesome. I think I think so.
Good. Yes, and it's a condition of being in news. We take in information we don't often get back.
Yeah.
That's I think most reporters, editors, that's our life. That's our lives. I will say for WBFO, if you have, you send an alert, and then you send 4 to 6 weeks, and then you send something the week of, maybe one phone call, not whether you got it or not. If it's let's say it's a press event, is WBFO going to be at the press event? I think that's legitimate. Ryan's words are, don't badger. Okay, just ask once. That's it.
Yeah. As for coming to the office, ordinarily not, unless you actually have something really cool to show me. Like if you're like
a puppy.
Yes, for example. Who knows?
Look, man, people use whatever method they can. You mentioned a press event. Are folks generally familiar with that? Does it sound like something that artists might do? In what case would that be appropriate as opposed to, here is, my event, here's what we're doing?
Well, I guess that would be more in line with like an Albright Knox with a major announcement. And they would send, not me, That's not the type of story that really interests me, but they'll send a reporter to do something that's timely, a major announcement about the new architectural plans or something like that.
Yeah, and we don't have the resources to cover events like that are going to be covered by every other news outlet. We too are interested in features and in helping you promote your event, or or your performance, or your whatever. So we do event previews and we do features, and that's it. We do some kinds of reviews, sort of, but not a lot. So if you have a press event, unless there's going to be like fireworks and hot dogs and I don't know.
And beer.
And beer. And beer. We probably just cannot send it to someone. I mean, maybe we will. Maybe that but it's blind luck.
And the last question I have, and then we'll open it up to the audience. Are there any, I guess, hidden opportunities, anything beyond, you're the arts reporter, I send to the arts reporter. And so two things that come to mind, Jeff, for you, the cover and the centerfold of the public.
The cover and the centerfold are wide open all the time. They're for almost any kind of visual art, not just paintings but photography and graphic illustration, anything that is eye-catching and anything that's eye-catching and interesting in any way and has a little bit of a story behind it, needs a little explanation. We keep folders full of images that people send. If you ask us, we will give you the exact dimensions. So if you wanted to, you could do a photo shoot around your performance. And if it was cool, if it was really great, we might say, hey, you know what? We can't write a feature. We don't have the wherewithal, but we're going to stick you in the centerfold and promote what you're doing that way. Same with the cover. They are not always connected to stories inside the paper or even to any large degree online. Sometimes they are. Sometimes, quite often, they're not. We regard them as features in themselves. It's part of the reason that we were willing to invest in creating a print newspaper is the sort of belief we have that there are some things that work better in print than they do online. And one of those things is big, beautiful, eye-catching images. So we're looking for them all the time. And if you send us a high-resolution, really good-looking image, there's a very good chance that we're going to stick it in that centerfold around the cover.
And Scott, for you, if, for instance, we have an artist who's working in wellness, right, or working with a mental health association, or whatever, is it worth not only pitching to you, but pitching to the reporter who covers that particular area?
Yes. I don't see why it wouldn't be. Yeah, I'm always looking for a feature story. Yeah, and for visuals, we do a spread on the website, and so if I'm doing my job properly, you can listen to the story in the car. You should be able to connect to human beings. You should be able to envision something, and then check it out online. So we try to do visuals online, and we're looking to expand that and maybe do more video in the coming year.
All right, let's open it up to all of you. Wow, that one went up quickly. Go ahead.
Are you guys doing pitches now? Because I have the best story.
Let's not do that right now. let me put a qualifier. Let me put a qualifier on this. Especially considering the fact that we've got a room full of people and it's being recorded for future use. Let's, if at all possible, try to make it something that everyone in the room, or at least most of the people in the room, might have value in the answer to that. But I really admire the fact that you were darn near coming over the table to pitch the story. That's really good. Yes.
Does it matter to either of your particular institutions or any of the others, as far as you know, if like one media outlet covers it, does that preclude your interest? Like, are you done being interested in that?
No. Although it's true that we're always hoping to find a different angle into the story. And whatever that angle may be, it may be a person, who knows. It's also true that we're often looking it's exciting if we can find a way that challenges the way the story has been covered elsewhere. That's good. That's great. If it can be sort of framed that way. The other thing I will add is that while we're not uninterested just because other people have covered a story, we certainly don't want to write the same story. And because of, I don't know how far I should go here. There's some dynamics in arts coverage in our region right now that they're such that it behooves us to cover small outlets and small artists more than the big ones. We know the big ones are going to get covered. We know that they are going to get covered sometimes to the exclusion of smaller artists and smaller efforts. And so because of who we are, it's kind of our job then to focus more on those who might be excluded. We're the alternative weekly in town, so we're looking for the alternative artists. That doesn't mean we don't cover the Albright Knox, Birchfield Penny. We cover them a lot, but there's that to bear in mind.
Yes and yes, absolutely. And I'll make it concrete. I agree. I noticed there was a dancer I was following online, and I saw she was getting a lot of coverage, and I was interested in her for my own purposes, for a story that I wanted to cover. And I saw she was on the news, and she was over and over and over again. And but I was looking at it from a completely different level, or different angle, and I went right after that. So yes, it does not matter if other people are covering it. It just will be a different story. What was the other thing you said, the last part? Which I agree with that too. It was important. I wanted.
I'm not talking about either of our outlets here, but there have been some. There's been a sort of shift in focus at some. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm looking for the smaller story. Thank you for telling me what I'm doing. I forgot. I'm looking for the smaller story. I just happened to do the Albright Knox and the University of Buffalo, but those stories are small level stories. You'll hear them on BFO. One has to do with children, and the other has to do with James Joyce. But I love the solo artist story. I love profiles. So that's really where my heart is.
Other questions? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
So I'm one didn't raise my hand for either one. So I'm Sabrina Peña, and I'm a composer and I'm a filmmaker and I'm Latina. And I was wondering, two questions. The film community here is pretty interesting and a little strange, and it's growing because there's more feature films and such coming here. So I was wondering specifically the film, what you guys would suggest. And secondly, on the diversity angle, do you have an interest in Latinas, African Americans, women? In the arts, especially like in fields like classical music that typically seem to skew one way and kind of ignore everybody else. And that's my question.
Yeah. So your first question is, my answer would be very specific to my outlet. Contact our film editor, Faust, M. Faust. The worst kept secret in the world is that his first name is Michael. We call him M, or Mr. Faust. He's a little persnickety, but he runs our film. We don't do any film coverage that doesn't get run through him. So you should. And he's interested in local filmmakers. As for the diversity angle, we are absolutely interested, particularly because we've got a real problem. We're like a lily white organization owned by 4 middle-aged white men. And we all know that that's just nutball and has to be addressed directly. And so we are always looking for a way to make our paper look a lot more like the arts community coverage. We're trying to. We're not always succeeding.
Yes, yes.
Scott, you're going to have to go first on the next question because I feel like you're getting off a little bit easy. So what is the next question that Scott will answer first? Yes.
I know we've talked a lot about pre-event and all of that, so I might be totally off base, but what about inviting somebody to come to an event and write about it afterwards? What's the way to go about that, or timeline, or suggestions?
That's trickier for us in radio. We're not doing that so much. We're definitely not doing reviews. So I'm not sure how I can help you in that regard. I'm looking, I'm throw it to him.
We tried.
Yeah, we also don't, I mean, we review gallery shows, things that are, recurring, that are available to people after the opening. But mostly our focus is on driving people to your event, interesting them in your event. So we do a lot of previews. And when we do features, we try to tie them to an event if there is one. If it's an ongoing project and there's some public availability to it, then we try to tie it to that. But you're not going to get a lot of reviews from us, frankly, which is something, I don't know, maybe we got to change that. But right now, that's what we're doing.
But on that topic, going back to why I enjoy doing what I do, ultimately it's to do a profile so the seed is already planted. 3, 4, 6 months later, oh, I remember, I've heard that name, I remember that artist. So I'm more interested in those kinds of stories as a listener, and I think ultimately I don't want to say they do more, but reviews are kind of simple and you see them everywhere. So I don't know, it's just, I'm not so interested in that as a writer, and we don't really do that at BFO. So, but my job here is to help. So just do it differently.
And, not necessarily a review per se, but if you've got, an event or something happening that has a strong visual component, that's sometimes where you can grab some TV coverage, especially weekends, right? Especially, there's kind of like, as TV coverage has expanded, Channel 4 has a 4 p.m. newscast. There's 5 p.m. newscasts. Most of them, if not all of them now, have the 5:30 newscast, which then becomes the 6 p.m. newscast, and then the 10, then the 11, then the morning show, then maybe something like AM Buffalo or whatever, Weekend Wake Up, all of those sorts of things. And so, again, that's really highly subject to breaking news, right? Number of times we've had, the cameras will be there, and then the cameras weren't there. We're like, where were they? And then we figure out that there was a big story that just happened, right? And we lost that coverage. Sometimes we follow up with them and say, hey, can we get you a little video from our event that you might be able to use, right? And a lot of times, send it in, especially if it's better than handheld, cell phone kind of thing. But that's something that, again, the highly visual aspect can sometimes work for that, and at least get you the, hey, this happened, right? Because sometimes it's just planting the seed for your future work.
I think within that there's a major point to make, and that is, as an artist, you're working and you're doing your day job, and then you have to change your hat and put it all on. Radio is not television, is not print, is not magazine, just because they're all media. Different timelines, different audiences, different stories, different approaches, and you have, unfortunately, that's one of the things I hope we can answer questions for. You have to think of them differently, and I absolutely agree with you. That's a great television story.
Questions?
Are you more likely to open up something from your personal email or from the news desk email?
I receive all of it. Except, that's not true. I have a personal email. I have something called the info email, which is where theater listings and gallery listings go. It's sort of sprinkled throughout the paper as a way to contact. I see various other emails too. I can't even tell the difference between them because they all sort of come to the same place. So I open them all.
Yeah, I'll open everything, but I'll just iterate the other point. Once I feel as though there's something interesting there, then I'm going to go and start doing research, so make sure I can find the rest of the story.
Yeah, I will add that in our paper and on our website, you'll see different email addresses for different departments, and you should use those. Like, you should send stuff to the film guy. If it's a film thing, you should send things to events at dailypublic.com if it's an event that you want to get into our calendar. If you want something in the theater listings or the gallery listings, you should send it to info@dailypublic.com, because that's what we say, and that's where we look for those things every week when we try to update things. So use them.
And for me personally, I mean, I'll just say I found a number of stories just through Facebook, so if you want to friend me, go right ahead. I watch, I look, I listen, I talk, so.
I don't hardly ever talk on Facebook. I just like to watch. But I do watch. And I accept almost all friend requests. That sounds so terrible.
Let's move quickly to the next question, please. Someone rescue us. Anyone?
That was a line out of Being There. I like to watch.
Is that it?
Well, I just have one quick question. Do you guys ever pick an artist and then interview them?
Yes, we do it.
Yes.
We do it just about every week. We have a feature called Spotlight that is pretty much an interview with an artist, whether it's a musician, sculptor, what have you. Sometimes it veers away from being artists. It can really be just about anybody, but it's an interview. It's a profile of a person. We do one of those every week. So, yeah.
We, as the two radio stations, I think we are sort of evolving. For a long time, my colleague Peter Hall would do lots of artist interviews. I did them years ago when I was there in the morning, but I think we are kind of reimagining how best to get these stories out. So continue to listen. I think we want to use the web a little bit better, use more on WBFO, and I think that so we don't want to, specifically for WNED-FM, we used to do them. We want just the music on WNED-FM and find other places to do that. If that answers your question.
We have one over here.
I don't mean to exclude you, Scott, but I was wondering, Jeff, you said that you rely on freelance work. How would you go about becoming a freelancer to write for Arts Around?
You would, in my particular case, you would write to me and pitch me a story. That's what you would do. You would say, hey, this is who I am and I want to write this story. And what I'll probably do, if it sounds like a good story, is write back and say, hey, have you done any writing before? Can you send me a couple of samples? And if I think it's going to work out, I'll probably say yes. I say yes more often than I say no.
Good to know.
Yeah. It's actually one of the great joys of having started this newspaper, The Public. At previous newspapers I worked for, I spent a lot of time saying no to people. And one of the ideas when we started The Public was that we would make a sort of concerted effort to say yes more often.
Yes.
Would you say, I think I may already know the answer to this, but would you say it makes more sense in a press release to be more creative and juicy rather than formal? Because sometimes they tell you to write, like it should look like this and it's more of a formal, so it can be kind of dry. So would you say it pays for?
You want to field this one?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to say I think it's great to be creative, but not at the, and this is true of almost, I believe this is almost any writing, not at the expense of clouding what it is, the information you need to get across. It is, it's great to be creative, but writing is a means of communication. If it doesn't communicate, then it's work. So yeah, you can be clever, but don't be so clever that I don't know.
I'll share something that Brian said. I think this makes a lot of sense for us, and I think it makes a lot of sense for most news organizations. And I understand most of you are small organizations or individuals, but if you can cultivate a relationship, if this is not just a one-off, or it's not just a series of one-offs. Here's a press release. Oh, I didn't get any response. Here's cultivate that relationship. So if Brian calls you, or I call you, or someone calls you, be responsive. As I say, I watch people on Facebook. I watch what you're doing. I watch the conversations. I like. And people talk to me on Facebook, and I'll respond back. So I think it's really about relationship building, believe it or not. Maybe it's easier for larger, like the Albright Knox or even the smaller galleries. but I would try it as an individual. Personally, I find Facebook a really great way to watch what you're doing.
You're gonna get bombarded with like 30, 40 requests a night.
I do this because I love doing it.
Well, they knew what they were doing.
I love what you do. That's the fun, and I just get to tell your story.
I see that you guys are both lawyers for Facebook. What about Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat? Are you looking at anything trending on there?
I am the only person in my office who does not. Everybody else in my office does, and I don't because it's too much.
You're old. No, I mean I think. I mean I look at Instagram, not Snapchat, but I feel like Twitter is great really for news producers and news editors because it's instantaneous and that's a soundbite. I'm not following that. I mean, I'm looking for like magazine-like stories, longer stuff.
Hi. I was wondering, you guys said that you both sort of work on stories all the time and you're looking for ideas. So is there anything you're working on currently that you need more information or more, just more things to include on any topic that you're looking for?
I mean, do you need the opinion of 50 artists for a story? Because you have 50 others.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. You mean like is there a particular kind of story?
Yeah, or like a topic or trend that you're looking to just gather more information on to actually create the story?
I feel like the answer has got to be yes. But I'm sort of racking my brain for specifics.
We kind of addressed that. Part of it has to do with the Buffalo story. And I think that, diversity and people of minority voices. I mean, I'm specifically looking for that. Again, it's easy to do the big culturals. That's an easy one. I'm looking for the smaller story, the smaller voices with interesting perspectives. So that's what I'm looking for on a constant basis. Does that sort of address your question?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and I'm certainly always looking for work that is happening outside of galleries, outside of institutions. That, again, this is unfair to those institutions and galleries and others who support networks for artists that have existed for a long time, but that's just the case. I am looking for people who are doing something new or finding ways to do art, without support, without a net. And I think that's especially compelling in a city like this, where despite sort of creeping gentrification, it is still relatively cheap, which means it can support a certain kind of artist, and a certain kind of artist can support him or herself. So those kinds of things, people who are, again, I keep saying doing something new, and that sounds trite, but that's what I'm looking for.
All right, well, any concluding thoughts?
Keep on keeping on. Keep working. Keep making stuff. If you guys don't make stuff, we've got no reason. We'd be so sad and lonely.
For me, it's amazing. Having grown up in Buffalo and spent most of my life here, my impression of art in Buffalo in the 70s was this was a really vibrant place. I mean, I was lucky, I was fortunate, my parents, they took me to concerts, they took me to the art galleries. Allentown was a different thing then. It was really a little more grassroots. I think what's going on is astounding. I never really expected to see this in my lifetime, and I'm very fortunate to be in this position, again, to work with artists, to hear your stories. I could come in and talk to you for 20 minutes, ask you the right 5 questions, and go back and produce it, but I usually like to hear the whole story, and so if you're going to better carve out an hour and a half or 2 hours just because I like what you do. So, and I love sharing these stories. I think it's an amazing time to be in Buffalo. It's an amazing time to be an artist in Buffalo. I think you're all really fortunate.
And my concluding thought on this is, I think for all of us, making sure not only that we keep feeding information, but that we keep supporting the coverage of the arts, right? And what Jeff alluded to is based partially on how many clicks some of those stories are getting online, right? So support your fellow artists, support your fellow cultural institutions, click on those stories, read those stories, send a letter into an editor saying we appreciate this coverage, right? So that collectively we can kind of reinforce the choices that are being made to continue to cover the arts, because in cities large and small, we're seeing that coverage erode. And we still have a fair amount of it, a good amount of it, in Western New York. So please keep that going, and join me in thanking our panel today.